Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Poland Daily History. We are here at the city of Lublin, one of the most historical and largest cities of all of Eastern Poland. Today, we are going to the Catholic University of Lublin, a bastion of the anti-communist movement during the time when Poland is in the grip of the Soviet Union. It was also the home to Karol Wojtyła, who would later on become Pope John Paul II. There, we will talk to a historian who specializes in 20th century history. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are in Lublin, more precisely the Catholic University of Lublin, with our historian here to explore more about the region. As we all know, in the 20th century, Lublin, or Poland in general, has been through very turbulent times. So I was hoping if we can talk a little bit about the region, about that time era. Let's start from the beginning, and can you tell me a little bit of the turn of the 19th century? How does Lublin look like, and the population, constitution, and all that?
Lublin w końcu XIX wieku był niezwykle interesującym miejscem.
At the end of the 19th century, Lublin was an extremely interesting place. This is where the interests of various European powers came into contact and which at times turned into conflicts. The Lublin province, because Lublin was part of the Russian state at the time, while also being the capital of the Lublin province, bordered with Austria-Hungary. This meant that in the event of war, Lublin and the Lublin voivodeship would naturally quickly turn into battlefield. At the same time, Lublin was a place of rapidly developing industry. While in the middle of the 19th century, Lublin had around 30,000 inhabitants, by the end of the 19th century it had grown to almost 100,000. It was also a very multicultural city at that time. At the end of the 19th century, around half the people in Lublin were Jewish. The other half was the Polish Roman Catholic Lublin. The very center of Lublin was inhabited by the Russians working for the Russian administration. So there were three interesting cultures constantly penetrating each other in this city. If we look at Lublin as a place of intellectual life, it turns out that Lublin was extremely important, particularly for the Jewish people. The best rabbinical schools were in Lublin, as well as the most substantial Jewish bookshop and library. Lublin was a kind of Jerusalem of the north, but a Jerusalem of enlightened Jews, literate Jews. At the end of the 19th century, it was decided that the best Jewish university in the world would be created here. This is a very interesting story related to the intellectual status of Lublin. The famous Jewish writer Isaac Singer wrote a book Yentl, which was later made into a movie in Hollywood. It's a story about the Jewish girl who could not study because she was female, so she dressed up as a man and began educating herself in Lublin. She finished rabbinic school here before leaving for the United States, where she would become an outstanding scientist. This is a true story, and it occurred here, in this city. Due to the city's rather rapid development, it was home to unhampered, rich, social, intellectual and cultural life. The end of the 19th and beginning of the 20th century saw the development of socialist movements. The Russian 1905 revolution also took place in Lublin, and it was a very bloody affair. Socialists and people favoring communism fought the ND, or Endecja, the so-called National Democrats. There were also the Bundowcy, a group of Jewish socialists. To put it simply, Lublin was an immense melting pot that was constantly cooking, but at the same time it was a city which, during this time, built many beautiful buildings, set up parks and established all the necessary fundaments for intellectual life.
Budowało w tamtym czasie piękne budynki, zakładało parki i stworzyła podwaliny życia intelektualnego.
Most people have heard about Poland's tragic fate during the Second World War, but less is known about the hardships the nation suffered during World War I. Next up, we will ask Professor Vnuk about how Lublin fared during the First World War. So the bloody fighting in 1905 was soon repeated in World War I, only about 10 years later. And I was wondering if you can tell me about how the fight in World War I affected this region in particular.
Polacy w okresie I wojny światowej nie mieli swojej armii i walczyli przeciwko sobie.
During the First World War period, Poles didn't have their own army and fought against each other in various European armies. This meant that the inhabitants of Lublin, both Jews or Poles, fought in the Russian army. Meanwhile, Poles from the cities of Poznań or Krakow, who were drafted into the armies of Germany and Austria-Hungary respectively, fought on the opposite sides of the Poles in Lublin, and Poles on both sides were shooting at each other. Indeed, the Lublin voivodeship shared the fate of the entire Polish area during the First World War, and this is the place where the front moved back and forth for 2 years. Lublin was occupied, well, exactly occupied or liberated by the Germans in 1915 and ceased to be the capital of a Russian province, becoming the capital of Poland under Austro-Hungarian occupation. At the same time, the part of Poland occupied by Austria-Hungary was attached to the part occupied by the Germans, and a small state was created beside Germany in 1916 called the Polish Kingdom. This was, as it later turned out, the Poles' first step to regaining independence after 123 years as a partitioned state. Lublin, occupied by the Germans, became an important center for independence activities. The Polish Socialist Party, led by Józef Piłsudski, played an important role here. There was a very strong center of Polish military organization in Lublin, so Lublin became a place where the Polish army and Polish administration was organized in the underground. At the same time, officials from the kingdom created by the Germans organized this administration legally as an occupational administration. The paradox was that most of the officers, officially appointed by the Germans, were at the same time members of the Polish underground, or more specifically the so-called Polish military organization. From the Polish point of view, the years of 1916, 1917 and 1918 constituted a period of occupation, while simultaneously also being a time of great hope. In 1918, on the night of the 6th and 7th of November, the first Polish government was formed in Lublin. This government was extremely important, a milestone in terms of the process of Poland regaining independence. This government was extremely democratic. It immediately announced an 8-hour workday as obligatory, a 6-day working week, and gave women voting rights. It was a gigantic step, not only towards independence, but also to creating a democratic Polish state.
Jako obowiązujący sześciodniowy tydzień pracy i dał prawa wyborcze kobietom. Był to więc olbrzymi krok nie tylko w kierunku niepodległości, ale również w kierunku stworzenia demokratycznego polskiego państwa.
So in 1918, when Poland finally regained its independence, how does the social fabric of the place look like?
W tym momencie, w roku 18, Polacy zaczynają być, to jest pierwszy moment, kiedy zaczynają być większością w Lublinie, a Żydzi stają się drugą co do wielkości.
This moment in 1918 is the first time when Poles became the majority in Lublin, while Jews became the second largest inhabitant group. At the same time, the city is incredibly diverse. We still have the Tsarist Russian center of the city, mainly represented by the Aleje Racławickie and Krakowskie Przedmieście streets. We still have the old medieval market and the entire old city. We have the royal castle towering over the city with an absolutely amazing Jagiellonian chapel. At the foot of the castle we have something which isn't there anymore, the Jewish town with its rich tenement houses as well as the poorer wooden area. We have the district of Wieniawa, the very poor Jewish area. We also have the workers' villages, inhabited by socialists, where things are constantly heated, because on the one hand there is poverty, but on the other a great potential of young people who want to do something with their lives. Finally, it's a city where the Polish and the Jewish intelligentsia rival one another.
Z jednej strony bieda, z drugiej strony olbrzymi potencjał młodych ludzi, którzy czegoś chcą. W końcu jest to miasto, gdzie rywalizują ze sobą inteligencja polska i inteligencja żydowska.
As we have seen today, Lublin has a very long, yet at times dramatic history. But places such as the Catholic University of Lublin sufficiently demonstrated the city spirit and their love for freedom. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee. I'll see you next time on Poland Daily History.